Have you ever wondered what truly makes a dog a hero in our eyes? It's not the spectacular stunts or the feats recorded in history books, but the simple, heartfelt actions when they put their entire being into protecting the ones they love. Today, I want to share a true story, a story that unfolded in 2018 in Boynton Beach, Florida, a quiet little coastal town by the Atlantic. There, a 12-year-old Labrador Retriever named Buddy did the unthinkable. He broke through a door and ran to fetch help from a neighbor to save his 87-year-old owner. This isn't a fabricated tale spun for effect. It's a slice of real life, proof that the bond between a human and a dog can sometimes transcend the boundaries of life and death. Boynton Beach isn't the kind of place where you'll find city lights or a frenetic pace. Its narrow, stone-paved streets wind past white-painted wooden houses, their porches bursting with bougainvillea and shaded by lush palm trees. The distant murmur of ocean waves blends with the chatter of birds, creating a scene that makes you want to pause and breathe deeply. In a modest home tucked behind a row of palms, 87-year-old James Carter lived out his final years in serene simplicity. He was a frail man, with thin white hair like wisps of mist and trembling hands that shook slightly when he held his morning coffee. Once a skilled mechanic, he now filled his days with small routines, reading the paper, watering plants, and talking to his only companion, Buddy, the Labrador Retriever he'd adopted 12 years earlier. Buddy was no ordinary dog. In his youth, he was a whirlwind of energy, tearing around the backyard, fetching sticks for James, and barking loudly whenever visitors arrived. His golden coat once dazzled the neighborhood kids, and his warm brown eyes seemed to speak, always twinkling with mischief. But at 12, an old age for a dog, Buddy had slowed down. His golden fur was flecked with silver, his legs wobbled on the porch steps, and his brown eyes had clouded with time. Yet in Buddy's heart, his love for James burned as fiercely as ever. Each morning, as James brewed coffee, Buddy would sprawl at his feet, waiting for the piece of bread James always shared. "You're my best friend, Buddy," James would say, rubbing the dog's head as Buddy wagged his tail slowly, as if understanding every word. Their life was a string of familiar moments, unchanged over the years. Neighbors like 62-year-old Helen, who lived a few houses down, would occasionally stop by with a plate of cookies or just to chat. Helen was a cheerful woman who loved growing roses and sharing stories of her younger days. She always smiled when she saw James and Buddy together on the porch. "You two are like an inseparable pair," she once said, and James would chuckle softly, nodding in agreement. No one in this small town could have guessed that, on an April morning in 2018, a tragedy would strike, and the only one to notice wouldn't be human, but a 12-year-old dog. That morning began like any other. Soft golden sunlight filtered through the palm fronds, illuminating James's little house. He woke early, pulled back the curtains to let the light flood in, and shuffled to the kitchen. The old coffee pot hissed to life, the sound of boiling water filling the quiet space. Buddy, as usual, lay on a small rug in the living room, his ears twitching at James's footsteps. James poured his coffee, sliced a piece of bread in half, and settled into his favorite armchair. He tossed a morsel to Buddy, smiling as the dog slowly picked it up and chewed with relish. But then in an instant, everything changed. As James stood to get another cup of coffee, his frail legs gave way. He grabbed for the table but missed, crashing to the floor. His head struck the corner of the wooden table, and he collapsed, unconscious. The coffee mug shattered, spilling dark liquid across the floor, where it mingled with blood seeping from a wound on his head. The house fell silent, save for James's faint, barely audible breaths. Buddy snapped awake. The sound of the fall jolted him to his feet, ears up, eyes wide with alarm. He rushed to James's side, nudging his face with his nose. No response. James didn't open his eyes, didn't smile, didn't pat Buddy's head as he always did. Buddy let out a low, hoarse whimper. He pushed his nose against James's hand, hoping for movement. But the hand remained cold and still. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like the end. An old man living alone, unnoticed, with no one to help. But Buddy refused to accept that. In his aging mind, one thought took hold. My owner is in danger, and I have to do something. Buddy began to bark. The sounds were weak, no longer the booming barks of his youth, but filled with determination. He raced around the house from the living room to the kitchen and back to James, barking relentlessly as if calling for help. But no one heard. James's house was secluded behind the palms, far from the main road, with the nearest neighbor hundreds of feet away. Buddy paused, looking at James again. His breathing was labored, but he bolted to the back door's screen, the only exit he could think of. Without hesitation, Buddy threw his trembling body against the screen. Once, it shook. Twice, the fabric began to tear. On the third try, with a loud rip, the screen gave way, and Buddy burst outside, carrying James's last hope. His golden coat was streaked with dirt, his old legs shaky but unrelenting, as he sprinted down the road toward Helen's house, the neighbor he knew from walks with James. Helen was in her yard, watering her beloved roses. The trickle of water and birdsong created a peaceful scene until Buddy's frantic barking shattered it. She looked up, startled to see Buddy alone. In 12 years, she'd never seen him without James. "Buddy, what's wrong?" she called, her voice tinged with worry. But Buddy didn't stop to explain. He barked urgently, ran toward her, then turned and raced back toward James's house, as if urging her to follow. His brown eyes blazed with desperation, and Helen felt a chill of dread. She dropped the hose, water splashing over the roses, and hurried after Buddy. He led her down the stone path, past swaying palms, straight to James's house. Bursting through the torn screen, Buddy barked wildly inside as if shouting, "Hurry, he's here!" Helen stepped in and froze. James lay motionless on the floor, blood pooling from his head, his face deathly pale. "Oh my God!" she gasped, fumbling for her phone. Her hands shook as she dialed 911, her voice breaking as she told the operator, "I need help now." "James Carter, he's unconscious. There's blood everywhere. Please hurry." While waiting, Helen knelt beside James, checking his breathing. It was so faint she could barely feel it, but it was there, a fragile thread of hope. Buddy stood nearby, his brown eyes fixed on Helen's every move. He stopped barking only when he saw her take action. The wail of sirens grew louder, and soon paramedics and police swarmed the small house. They lifted James onto a stretcher, checked his vitals, and rushed him to the ambulance. Buddy tried to follow as the doors closed, but Helen held him back, stroking his golden fur to calm him. "You did good, Buddy," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Thanks to Buddy's quick thinking and unwavering loyalty, James reached the hospital in time. Doctors diagnosed a brain hemorrhage from the fall, a life-threatening condition that could have been fatal without immediate care. But because Buddy acted without hesitation, James survived. After weeks in the hospital with days of intensive care, he returned home. He was weaker, needing a cane to walk, but he was alive. And for Buddy, that was all that mattered. The day James came home, Buddy was waiting at the door. When Helen's car pulled up and James stepped out, the old dog bounded forward with all the strength he had left. He pressed his head against James's legs, whimpering as if recounting the ordeal. From the moment James fell, to breaking the door, to leading Helen to save him. James sank onto the porch steps, pulling Buddy into his arms. Tears rolled down his weathered face as he whispered, "You saved me, Buddy. I don't know where I'd be without you." In that moment, the 87-year-old man and his 12-year-old dog knew they weren't just friends. They were family, bound by an unspoken bond stronger than anything. Helen watched, her smile warm. Later, she shared the story with the town, and word spread fast. Buddy became a local hero. Neighborhood kids flocked to see the old dog, while adults marveled at his loyalty. A local paper even ran a story, calling him Boynton Beach's four-legged hero. But to Buddy, the praise meant nothing. All that mattered was James, still sitting in his armchair each morning, brewing coffee and sharing bits of bread, just as they'd done for 12 years. Life for James and Buddy went on, but it carried new meaning. Though weaker, James made time for Buddy, often sitting on the porch watching the old dog bask in the sun, smiling as he recalled what happened. "You're not just a dog, Buddy," he'd say. "You're my guardian angel." Buddy, as if understanding, would lift his head, wag his tail slowly, and nuzzle James's hand. Helen became a fixture in their lives. After the incident, she visited often, bringing homemade cookies and funny stories to make James laugh. She had a soft spot for Buddy, always slipping him a treat. "If it weren't for you, Buddy, James wouldn't be here," she'd say, patting his head. Buddy would gaze at her with gentle brown eyes, as if saying he only did what any friend would. Buddy's story spread beyond Boynton Beach. A local animal welfare group heard it and awarded him an honorary loyalty medal. At a small ceremony in the town park, kids crowded around Buddy, giggling and petting his silvered fur, while adults snapped photos and clapped. James, in a wheelchair, beamed with pride as his friend was honored. But Buddy, true to form, ignored the fuss, lying contentedly at James's feet, his brown eyes glowing with simple joy at seeing his owner safe. This isn't just a story of a narrow escape. It's a reminder that in our darkest moments, friendship, whether between humans or with a dog, can be the beacon that guides us through. Buddy had no superpowers, no ability to speak, but he had a heart that loved and a will that never gave up. For those who've lived through loss and joy, this story hits home. It shows that life doesn't always need grand gestures to feel complete. Sometimes a loyal friend, furry or not, is enough to make you feel less alone, valued, and loved. Buddy is more than a dog. He's a symbol of loyalty, unconditional love, and the quiet strength in the simplest things. His story has inspired hundreds, from pet owners to those searching for a reason to believe in goodness. Some even started volunteering at animal shelters, moved by Buddy's actions. A local school named their basketball team Buddy's Braves, honoring the dog who taught them about courage and sacrifice. On quiet evenings, as the sunset bathes Boynton Beach in gold, James sits on his porch, gazing at the sea. Buddy rests beside him, his head on James's lap, his cloudy brown eyes peaceful. James strokes Buddy's silver fur, whispering, "You gave me more time, Buddy. I'll cherish every second with you." It's a promise from a man to the friend who saved his life, and proof that in a chaotic world, some things endure, like the bond between an old man and his dog. This story doesn't end here. It lives on in everyone who hears it, shares it, and believes that friendship across species is life's greatest gift. Let Buddy's tale warm your heart and remind you that no matter how tough life gets, there's always a loyal friend ready to stand by you if you open your heart to them.